and saw Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, I want to talk to you about the memo that has been raised earlier here today, the Morton memo from June, and the part of it in particular entitled Factors to Consider when Exercising Prosecutorial Discretion. I am certainly familiar with the concept of prosecutorial discretion. In my experience, that has been more of a bottom-up discretion exercised by individual prosecutors. That having been said, when I look at the list of factors and the degree of specificity in that list, it strikes me that whether intended in this to be this or not, it strikes me that it is a roadmap for retaining illegal immigrants. And it seems to me you could look at this list and meet a few of these categories and have a good chance at being pushed to the bottom of the prosecutorial list. That is particularly so when I look at the draft memo that referred to the DREAM Act that came out of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services last year. And I understand we've had assurances that that draft memo was just a draft and parts of it were not included in the Morton memo. But my question is, looking at the extensive nature of the list of factors to consider, in your experience as a prosecutor, have you ever seen or are you aware of other memos like this in the context of other crimes? For example, in the context of federal crimes at the Department of Justice or any other crime. Are you familiar with memos this extensive that lay out with this specificity what prosecutorial discretion is? Because I've never seen such. I'd be interested to hear your view on that.
Well, the Department of Justice has the whole U.S. Attorney's Manual, which is to guide the exercise of prosecutorial discretion, and it's pretty thick.
Sure.
So there's a lot there. And also, Representative, there is a November, I think, 2000, I have to go back and check the date. I want to say it's a Doris Meisner memo that lays out the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in immigration cases and specifies what a significant federal interest is in that connection. That memo has in turn been cited by subsequent directors either of INS or ICE as recently as Julie Myers in the previous administration.
Sure. I would say a couple of things. The U.S. Attorney's Manual certainly lays out broadly for individual prosecutors the guidance for them as they prosecute cases. This I have never seen, and I would like if you can point to other guidance with this specificity, I would love to see it, particularly when these factors consider things like whether the person subject to prosecution's spouse suffers from an illness. That seems extraordinary when you are deciding whether to prosecute someone for a criminal act.
If I might explain?
Yes.
Here's what can happen in the immigration context. You have a U.S. citizen spouse who is very ill and requires home care. And the issue is, do you deport someone who has been taking care of that U.S. citizen spouse and then put that spouse into much more expensive health care, or do you allow the spouse to stay in country?
Sure.
So those are the kinds of scenarios that need to be adjudicated or looked at on a case-by-case basis.
If you take this list, you can see a lot of you can come up with a number of different individual circumstances. Certainly most prosecutors know, in my experience, the difference between prosecuting a petty thief and a terrorist. And without the specificity here, I could make the case that certain aspects of the DREAM Act are implemented in here, not not verbatim, but when you read all of the policy documents that relate to this stuff, it's not difficult to see that this, in my opinion, and a lot of people in the 2nd Congressional District of Arkansas, in our opinion, this looks more like a policy document. And let me say a couple things. I'm running out of time here. If you look over at the ICE union issued a press release in response to this. These are union members. They said, quote, "Unable to pass its immigration agenda through legislation, the administration is now implementing it through agency policy and bypassing Congress." Now, this is a union agreeing with me, which doesn't happen a lot. But on this particular instance, I would welcome your comments.
Well, I would say we're not bypassing the Congress, much as we would like the Congress to address these issues, and in fact would invite that kind of engagement. What we are is suggesting or giving guidance to the field. By the way, I met yesterday in Chicago with all of the area directors for ICE in this area, and we went through and talked about the operations that are going on and how they're going to impact public safety and how we want to guide our resources. And this is a group that is fully engaged. They get it.
Let me real quickly mention a couple of things. It seems to me that a lot of what we see in terms of state legislation in Arizona and Alabama and Florida and Virginia and other states that is passed to address immigration issues, it seems to me that that is simply the state's reaction to what they see as the federal government's failure to do its job on the border, not just in this administration, in administration after administration, including the one that I served in, the last one. And it seems to me if the federal government was truly securing the border, you would not have to deal with a lot of these state laws that are percolating up to address what folks back in the states see as the federal government's failure to do its job. And again, it goes across administration. But I have one quick question, unrelated question.
And I'd like an ability to respond to that.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a quick...
The gentleman's time has expired. We'll let the Secretary respond to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would suggest, first of all, that much of the information about the border that is distributed is not, in fact, accurate. And one of the things I'm trying to do is get the accurate information to the Congress and invite anyone from the Congress to come to the border. But secondly, in my judgment, I think a number of the states are acting because the Congress has failed to act.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson-Lee, is recognized.
Madam Secretary, thank you so very much for sharing your time